By 1986, transforming robots were everywhere. Following the massive success of Takara toy lines like Diaclone and Microman in Japan, other companies began to import these toys into their own markets, creating many new franchises. These new themes, namely Tonka's GoBots and Hasbro's Transformers, made the popularity of transforming robots skyrocket across the world, with massively successful shows, comics, and especially toys. Seeing possibility for profit, one unlikely company decided they wanted to cash in on the craze: Coca-Cola. So, in the summer of 1986, Coca-Cola Europe got to work designing and releasing a transforming robot of their own. Possibly inspired by popular Transformers like Soundwave and Blaster, who converted into realistically sized music players, they decided to approach the toy as being a standard Coke can, which could change into an articulated robot mode. Additionally, they decided on two variants, one based on the classic Coca-Cola design, and another based off Cherry Coke. Strangely enough, these two variants were released in very different ways. Firstly, the Cherry Coke variant was offered as a mail-away item on select Coke can products. It is important to note, this guy was only available in Europe, and I can't really find any info on a wider release, or if it was ever planned. I have to say, it's hard to imagine any kid reading this and not wanting the toy. The offer boasted that the transforming robot would be able to quickly transform, and telescoping parts would allow the robot to stand at nearly twice the size of a normal Coke can, and they really wanted to stress how incredible this was. The second variant, based off the normal Coke can design, didn't have nearly as wide of a release. As far as I can tell, this guy was really only given out as a birthday toy at Burger King's at the time. There's not really much information about these guys online, but I figured it would help to have some context before we took a look at them. So, with the history out of the way, let's take a look at how these toys actually turned out. I figured the best place to start would be with the boxes, since that's really the first impression you're going to get of these guys. Weirdly enough, they both have very different boxes outside of this instruction area. These instructions are actually pretty nice, and make sure you know exactly what you're getting into with these guys. Now, firstly, the Cherry Coke robot box is honestly really cool. As you can see, it features a stylized version of the transformation, which shows us all the steps in a very unique way. It looks like the robot is moving, and it even has these lines to indicate speed, and it also has a really cool looking logo up at the top, the Cherry Coke robot. It's got these bright colors, and honestly, it's just a really cool and unique box design that really pops. Unfortunately, you can't really say the same thing for its counterpart. This one kind of has just a blue and black gradient in the background, which I guess is supposed to look like stars and space and the sky, but the logo is kind of boring. It's just the name, and it just features these two static images. The robot image is repeated on both sides, and honestly, it's just standing there. It's not really an action pose or anything. It's kind of boring. Now onto the toys themselves. I cannot lie, I think these guys are really cool. They both come with this little cardboard tab on the top for some reason, and honestly, I'm not really sure what the point is. The Cherry Coke robot actually comes with a little white sleeve on it to, I guess, protect the printing and keep it safe from the sun. As you can tell, these guys definitely look the part. The notches on the side might make it a little obvious that you're not holding a real can, but I think if you squint, these really do look like Coke cans. Unfortunately, the can shape has changed a little bit since 1986, so probably wouldn't be super useful for me to compare it to a real one since I don't own a vintage Coke can, but I think that you can tell just by me holding them here that they're definitely sized properly. The transformation is really simple, but also I think really satisfying. Like it said on the advert, it starts off with you just pulling the pull ring on top, and I really like this because it obviously is here to emulate the actual opening of a Coke can. And once you pull back, you get this really satisfying pop. And honestly, guys, that's 90% of the transformation right there. As you can see, it looks a little weird like that, but once we pull down the legs and also rotate these shin pieces, making sure to follow the instructions very closely on the back of the box, pull down the arms, go ahead and fix the other shin, and then it's just as simple as pushing up his arms to the side to get those shoulder pads in place, and honestly, that's it. As you can see, he's a great-looking robot. He might be a little wide, but it definitely looks very distinct from his can mode, and the line work and printing look absolutely great. Now, one thing though, I definitely don't think he's quite twice the size like the back of the box indicates. He definitely is taller, don't get me wrong, and it's a great looking robot, but I think that was a little bit of false advertising on their part to say that he was twice the size. I'd say he's maybe 1.25 times the size, but don't get me wrong, those springs and telescoping parts that are in there are definitely putting in some great work to make a great looking robot mode, but yeah, I don't quite think he's twice the size, but I think that the sculpt here is great. I mean, specifically the head sculpt. As you can see, he's got very well-defined eyes, a nose, mouth, cheekbones, everything, and it honestly looks just as good, if not better, than the other offerings of the time from Transformers and GoBots. I mean, this is a very nice-looking robot head. Now, the articulation, while not great, is pretty comparable to the norms of the era. We do actually get full 360-degree rotation on the shoulders, along with the ability to extend the arms outward, and we can swivel the elbows. Having elbow movement alone honestly puts this guy ahead of many other Transformers of the time. But seriously, these guys don't look out of place at all standing next to other toys kids would have had at the time. It's easy to imagine a child back in the 80s coming up with some stories for these guys. So yeah, maybe they weren't part of the actual GoBots or Transformers lines, but I think that these guys are really cool transforming robots, especially for the time. They have great printing on them, they have great molds and designs, and honestly, the transformation and just the gimmick of the whole thing is super unique. They look great on the shelf, they're super durable, the plastic on them, I mean, these things are 30 years old, but they still feel great. And overall, they're just, honestly, really great figures. If you could get either of them, I'd honestly recommend it. They're not super expensive today. They're just kind of a little oddity that's been lost to time. So yeah, guys, I hope you've enjoyed this look back at, honestly, what I think is a really unique piece. And if you like the video, like it. This isn't my normal content, but if you want to subscribe, I'd recommend doing that too. And honestly, guys, if you're still here, just thanks for watching the video. So yeah, I'll see you all next time, and represent.